Hey guys, it's Pranav, and today I'm gonna benchmark the Galax GeForce GTX 1650. So this particular graphics card doesn't require any external power supply. So that means this graphics card will be taking advantage of the power which comes from the motherboard and the motherboard only. It also comes with 4 gigs of VRAM, GDDR5 type, and this is basically the worst case scenario for GTX 1650. It doesn't come with GDDR6 memory. It doesn't have external power supply, although most GTX 1650s do not require external power supplies. It's just that the ones which do come with external power supplies, not the power supply, but do come with support for 6 pin or 8 pin connectors. I'm assuming it's 6 pin, because like the ones which require external power supply are usually 90 watts, and this particular graphics card and most other GTX 1650s are 75 watt graphics cards. So this is like literally the worst case scenario for GTX 1650. And speaking of the worst case scenario for GTX 1650, or any graphics card for that matter, I have 16 gigs of RAM, which is good, but I have 16 gigs of RAM running at 2400 megahertz, and it's running at single channel memory. So yeah, that's like the worst case scenario you can think of. I mean, sure, the CPU is more than enough for the Core i5 9400 F is more than enough to power, not power, but you know to go with, more than enough to go with a GTX 1650. So yeah, I mean, this is basically the worst case scenario for GTX 1650, and let's see how it handles games. And I'm also going to be overclocking the GTX 1650, so yeah, let's see what happens. So the first game I'm running is Metro 2033 Redux. So this is a game from 2014. So I thought it really shouldn't be demanding, but there's one setting which really messes up my GPU. So currently I have the setting on, it's cranked to the highest point, and I'm getting about 16 FPS, and this is terrible. Now look what happens if I turn it off. That is a lot better. So let's just get into the game and
As I entered the abandoned tunnel with Bourbon,
see the gameplay from the GTX 1650. Oh, okay, that came out of the blue. Now this is completely fine without that setting turned on. Now let me turn on the setting and let's see what happens. Okay, this is a terrible idea. And immediately we're getting about 16, okay, 21 FPS, which is still unplayable. The ideal frame rate should be about 40. Okay, there's absolutely nothing I could do. There's a lot of input lag. Oh my god, this is terrible. So this is terrible. And yeah, that was quick. So next up we have Borderlands 2. So this is a game from 2012, and it really shouldn't be demanding considering its age, unless I bump up the resolution to 4K. So GTX 1650 is meant for 1080p gaming and not for 4K. So currently I'm running at 1080p Ultra. By Ultra I mean basically every visual setting cranked to the highest. So I'm getting about 138, 140 FPS right now. So let's see what happens when we crank the setting. We crank the resolution up to 4K, because I just want to watch the world burn. Uh, okay. We're getting about 33, 34 FPS right now, and let's just run around and see what happens. Let's see if the FPS drops from 30. And I mean, oh no. Okay. Okay. we just got about 24 FPS that scene. And okay, this is terrible because I thought the FPS would be about 30, considering this game is pretty old, and we are getting about 26 FPS. So this scene seems to be the most demanding for now. So let's end the counting and let's overclock the GPU. Now MSI Afterburner is the tool I use for overclocking and monitoring the FPS. So let's just crank the core clock to 115 and the memory clock to 504. Okay, let's just hope that the game doesn't crash. And let's go to the same place where we started and count our FPS from there. Actually, you know what? Let's see what the FPS is in at 1080p. So right now we're at 4K. And now it's 1080p. Okay, we were at 140, 138 FPS, and now it's like 157 FPS. So that's a significant improvement. So this overclock would help us not to drop from. We were getting about 35, 33 FPS, and we're getting about 38, 39 FPS. Let's just hope that the FPS doesn't drop from 30. We got 40 FPS right there, and yeah, we just dropped from 30, but okay, this was the most demanding scene before, and we're getting about 30 FPS. So that's a decent improvement. Like 4 FPS, that's about what I would expect overclocking a GTX 1650. So that's it for the video, and stay tuned for the upcoming benchmarks of the GT 210. That's right, the worst possible GPU you can think of. And I'm not gonna spoil it for you. Cheerio.